welcome to another episode of Radio Control Car Shed, where I like to share some of my adventures with my radio control cars, my passion, and some of the just general ramblings that I have about these cars. Today's episode will talk about the Tamiya XV01. The chassis itself can be run both on-road with a degree of competency, and it can also be run on relatively flat dirt with some jumps thrown in for good measure. The handling characteristics of these vehicles has really got the fun factor figured out. It's a tail-happy car, but it's also very easily drivable, so it's a controllable slide that you will typically get these chassis into. You feel that these cars handle just like a real car. There's body roll. The tail end comes out. You can't go as hard because if you do, you're going to damage the shell. And this becomes more realistic. You're not out there to just push the car to the limit and let it roll over. You want to drive it with a bit more care, simply because these cars just do look that bit better. And at the same time, the fact that they just look so realistic is the pleasure of it all. It's not just about pushing the limits of the car anymore, but it's also about driving these cars and just seeing them handle, sliding, keeping control of them as much as you can, pushing it just to that edge, but never to the point where you know you're going to crash. The three cars that you see here represent different build ethics in terms of what I use each one for. This first one here, the Datsun 240Z, is far more detailed than the other two cars behind. You've got real wipers, or at least very realistic wipers. You've got a lot more detail in terms of aerials, handles on the rear. You've got the kill switches, you've got hinges, or at least latches here, jacking points. It's a much more realistic looking car. The chassis itself has been decked out with a lot of option parts. Now, these option parts are not necessarily all to improve performance or durability, although they do in many cases. But what they're there for me is to actually showcase a very glitzy looking chassis and a very nice looking body shell. So this car is a car that I use with a standard 540 silver can motor direct from the Tamiya XV01 kit. It is on the slow side, but that's how I like to drive this car. This car is not pushed to the absolute till. It is not the fastest of the three by any stretch of the imagination, but it really is a car that I just love to bring out and drive carefully to make sure with absolute certainty that there isn't a crash or a rollover, because I don't want this shell to be scratched under any circumstances or broken. By comparison, looking at this Evo 3, this Evo 3 was built more as a basher. Again, definitely not a car that I would go and push to the limit of crashing. But when I say basher, it just means that I take a bit more liberty with it. In the time that I've had it, yes, it's rolled unfortunately once, but again, very minimal damage to the shell. You can see that this doesn't have as much detail on the shell itself. And that just stems from the fact that this is a car that I will push just that little bit further. It's got full lighting system though, so it does have a degree of fun scalability when I drive. In terms of the chassis itself, the arms, etc. are all plastic because this car is used more regularly, and as such, if there was to be any damage to the chassis in terms of the arms, etc., I want to know that there is a degree of durability. And by that I mean that metal arms, which we have on the Nissan 240Z, typically tweak out very easily under a crash situation. This car also has a few other key areas that have been addressed. They relate to the internal gears, shimming of them with metal washers, because there is an inherent problem with the spacers. And if you go and do a search on some of the internet websites, you will see that there is always an area where one of the gears in particular gets eaten up by a pin, and it needs these metal washers to stop it from happening. So please do check that out, and I will one day actually show you exactly what I mean, because I have the fourth kit which I have not built yet, and I will actually show much more detail as to what these things are that need doing. So they've all had the various weak areas addressed of them. This one though still runs original ball end links, etc. from the kit. It runs a slightly faster Holmes Hobby motor on it. That again is just to give a bit more performance, because to me, not only does it have a more modern shell, but it's a car which I like to just push that little bit further. The final chassis that you can see here is the Evo 7 body shelled car. Now this one unlike the other two which use magnets for their body mounting, this one has body post holes, and the reason is twofold. Firstly, unfortunately, the XV07, I could not find it without the body post holes pre-cut by Tamiya. And the second reason is this is the high performance XV01 out of the three of them. And indeed, even when the fourth one gets built, the fourth one will not be a high performance car. This is the only one which I really drive to push to the limit. So you can also see that there is a lot less detail again on the outside. I've got fake lighting compartments that I've built into this car just because I really do not like stickers for lights. The body posts come in handy because this car is running a much hotter motor, which means that in the event that it does roll, there is the possibility that the magnets might release the shell. So because of that, this car has the body post holes. Internally as well, you can see that this car is running different ball end links. These are all Traxxas ball end links. It's also running upgrades that were needed for the other cars, but in addition, it's got additional touches, such as heat shrink around the universal joint end caps where there was a known weakness of the clips opening up. It got a additional belt tensioner that is coming on the way that will be put through on the belt cover, and that is all required because this car is running a much more powerful motor. In addition to that, it's running the external belt pinions that are made out of aluminium from Tamiya, which the other cars are not running. And it also has the metal gear diffs. Again, something that I felt was potentially more durable than the plastic pieces. Whether it really is or not, to be truthful with you, the other chassis are fine, but again, they're running much less powerful motors. So I just thought I would share with you these three cars, show you a bit of each, and especially to give you a feeling of the fact that the XV01 is such an amazing chassis that you could literally use it for a pure scale car as a beautiful display piece that is sometimes driven outside relatively carefully, such as my 240Z here. A car that has scale, has lights, etc., driven a bit harder, such as the Evo 3 that I have here. Or can be an all-in-all performance radio control car, which is incredibly fun sliding, pushing the limits, and even just getting great lap times around a slightly flatter buggy track in terms of a full upgrade car being the Evo 7. In all instances, what's more interesting to note though is that the Evo 7 being the highest performing car doesn't run all the option parts that the Datsun 240Z has, given that I don't want to inbuild potential areas for tweak etc. to happen if there is a big crash. The interesting side of things is that all the option parts do not necessarily equate to a better car. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I do look forward to bringing you more action videos of these cars in due course. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and do take care.